Hey guys, Huzzy bringing you another video. Now, welcome to another Riot dev video. I generally do these on most of the quick gameplay thoughts that Riot do nowadays because I love this type of stuff. I love getting into the reasons why Riot are doing stuff because I think in the last couple of years, I think more insight is good to why they're doing everything. And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit confused about this topic, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of see why they're doing it. So if you don't know, there is a change coming to top lane items that fundamentally they are removing health from the items. You're like, okay, cool, because some top laners get weirdly tanky with doing a lot of damage. So they're removing health from items, but they're actually adding AD. They're adding damage to them. And I don't think that's the problem. So I'm a little bit interested to see why they're doing it. You know, even Riot recently have spoken about the damage is very high. They're looking to tone that down eventually. So the idea of adding AD is, to me, a bit counterintuitive. But let's see what Riot says, and we'll give it obviously a fair go. Obviously, you're getting this a bit late. Obviously, I had my weekend trip that I went away. This was released over the weekend, so I just wasn't here to cover it. I've just got back a couple of days, well, yesterday, and this is the next day, so I'm recording it now. So you'll probably see this tonight, probably. But anyway, let's get into it. So, this is from Riot Flox. He is a pretty prominent Rioter. He's generally the guy, I believe, that when they post the patch notes and the interim week of because we have a patch every 2 weeks, but in the interim week between them we get the patch preview. He's the guy that always posts that. So obviously he's to do with balance and stuff like that. So, okay. We know what you're thinking. Why the heck are we giving fighters even more AD next patch? Yes, I am. And also, I've just noticed that I'm really blown out at the moment in the camera. Unfortunately, my studio lights have decided not to work, so that's why it's a bit because the studio lights offset that, so I just can't, I don't know, it's just not working. I don't know why. Anyway, but yeah, even more AD. The gist of it is that ever since preseason 2021 item overhaul, light fighters like Aurelia and Xin Zhao have felt a lot more like unpunishable tanky murderers than they really should. Probably Fiora in that group as well. So again, that's the light fighter category. When these kind of champs have too much of their power in health and defensive skewed items, their high risk, high reward playstyle gets washed out and becomes reliable, low risk, yet still high reward. Which I would say that's fundamentally, you know, I'm not trying to say whatever, trying to be a bit awkward here, but that right there, that whole sentence is what I feel about League as a entirety nowadays. League used to be high risk, high reward. That if you build damage, only damage, you, could do a lot of damage, but you're going to get punished massively for it. In League, because of how much damage you're doing basically with one damage item now, that there was a video recently, I don't know if anybody saw it, some type of pro was watching a video from 4 or 5 seasons ago of, I think it was a Veigar getting chased by an Olaf. And the Olaf had 3, maybe 4 items complete, and the Veigar had a couple items complete. And it was a good 30+ second clip of an Olaf literally constantly attacking a Veigar and just not really doing any damage to him, even though he had 2 damage items. And the Veigar actually eventually turned and killed that Olaf, but not by bursting him. It was again slowly ticking away. And that was really high skill, because it's well, if you miss any of your abilities, it mattered a lot. If that pro, again, I can't exactly remember who it was, but that exact pro was watching that going, if that was modern day, that Veigar would have died instantly. And even with less items on the Olaf would have only needed 1, maybe 2 items, and the Veigar would have died in a quarter of the time. And it's well, it's high risk. Well, it's low risk, high reward, and that's League in itself. It's too much damage, and you don't need to land all your spells to do a lot of damage. It's too reliable. But yeah, so they're saying this specifically for this top lane example, though. But the fact that they're just even saying this at all, I'm actually kind of impressed with, because I don't know if Riot actually want to admit that in any regard. But anyway, pressing on. I don't want this video to be too long, so I can't keep stopping. They basically become frontliners that can single-handedly murder you, rather than the risky champions who have to be swift and smart going into fights in order to get their sweet payoffs. At that point, why would you pick Nasus when Riven feels just as durable and also has better damage and mobility? They're exaggerating a bit, but you get what I mean. Well, maybe Riven might be the bad example. Aurelia. Why would you pick Nasus when Aurelia exists? Literally, Aurelia is basically as tanky as Nasus, or it feels like, especially when she's got W. She does way more damage on average. Like, people go, oh, well, Nasus in late game can press a Q. That's the point. Sometimes he struggles to get to you, where mobility-wise, Aurelia is way more mobile. So, it is true. Like, it's a very good point to make. So, anyway... an interesting issue, make sure I'm not blocking any of the text. An interesting issue in the fighter item space is that a lot of the items are pretty similar, yet the champions and classes they're meant for are quite diverse. What do Alawi, a Juggernaut, Fiora, a light fighter, and Vi, a diver, all have in common? Honestly, not very much. But they use a lot of the same items and all are called fighters. Last season, that problem got even worse as they all consolidated around a handful of powerful items like Gore Drinker and Sterix Gauge. Practically most top laners, well, even some junglers really who are in the fighter category, are still buying those two items, to be honest. Which, yeah, is that a bit boring? I don't know. But Sterix made pretty much all fighters good at team fighting, while Gore Drinker did the same, plus give them all huge heals at low health, so again, lowering that risk. These subclasses started blending together rather than distinguishing themselves as three separate archetypes. Very true. Not all fighters are supposed to be good at team fighting, and when Sterix is making them that way, it can be kinda messed up. This is all pretty good stuff. I still don't know where the adding AD comes into, because they all still do a lot of damage. Yes, but basically they all do a lot of damage, but they can team fight even if they're not designed to because of Sterix or Gore Drinker. Still don't see that. I can get, like, let's make them a bit squishier so that the playstyle is higher risk, but giving it more damage, I'm not completely on board with yet, but we'll, again, keep seeing if Riot say something about it. To de-homogenize the system, we considered adding new items tailored specifically for each class. We did a bunch of early explorations for new fighter items and even tried overhauling some existing underused ones. There were some wild ideas like making Silvermare something like old Sword of the Occult. I would be completely fine with that. There's Medjai's, so why isn't there... Sword of the Occult was the AD version of Medjai's, which is still in the game, but we don't actually have an AD version. I'm not opposed to that. It's a high-risk strategy that really backfires if you end up dying a lot and you lose all your stacks. And killed in the box version of More, that would grant invulnerability. Yeah, no, we don't need... No. we don't need invulnerability. Stay clear of that. Anyway, these explorations were fun and interesting, but we came to realize that this was like building on shaky foundation. Okay, before adding anything, we needed to make sure that no item in the current system is a default item of every subclass. So that's what they're looking to do. You can't have an item like Sterix that you're building on Alawi and Tryndamere and Fiora and Aurelia and Camille and name a top laner AD champion. They all buy that item. That's a good point to make. Each subclass also needs to have exciting items that reasonably cover their needs. And last but not least, for the long-term health of the fighter class at large, we had to ensure that no item breaks down their subclass's weaknesses. Are Riot really saying that? Wow, okay. Once we have those fundamentals down, then maybe we can consider adding new items if necessary. So why I'm actually a little bit confused by that sentence near the end there, that items shouldn't be covering off the subclass weaknesses. So, like, if you're a light fighter, you're supposed to be very squishy, but you do a lot of damage, while buying a Sterix is covering off your weakness of being squishy. It's giving you that burst shield to survive the situations. The reason why I'm so confused about this is because that's what Riot's done with the item overhaul as a whole. The whole item overhaul is about covering off weaknesses of champions. You know, earlier they did have... maybe they mention it, but they had the Stridebreaker, which is for immobile top lane AD champions, and it gives them mobility. That covers off a big weakness, like Darius is a good example. One of the biggest fundamental ones for me has always been Gale Force. AD carries who are designed to be immobile generally do a higher amount of DPS or a higher amount of damage potential because they are immobile, but giving them Gale Force covers off that weakness of being immobile. So this is weird to me that Riot is saying we can't have items that break down you know, there needs to be a subclass weak. That's what I'm getting from this anyway, is that they're saying that an item should not be blocking a weakness of a subclass. But that, again, that's what Riot's been doing in the last couple of years. That's why I've not loved the item overhaul that they did, is because nothing feels weak anymore. Everything does too much damage, and what's the weakness of anything? Like, there isn't one. It's just do a lot of damage and you're golden. So this is an interesting thing that Riot's making. They've already said 2 things that I think you can apply to overall League of Legends, not just this top lane situation, and that is... Maybe it's an experiment to see how this is taken, and if people are like, oh, wow, this is good, then maybe they'll apply it to all of League. I don't know. Okay, so next up is, with all of this in mind, we determined that the single most impactful thing we could do was to push Sterix out of being a default option for every fighter everywhere. True. It should be a strong anti-burst teamfight option for juggernauts like Darius, where champions like Viego or Master Yi, I do like how they're grouping those together, shouldn't get access to that without some serious trade-offs. Just like how we weren't comfortable with Juggernauts getting a dash using old dashy stride breaker, interesting, we aren't comfortable giving light fighters the durability they're currently getting with Sterix Gauge. That's kind of interesting, and I do actually agree with it. Viego, believe it or not, and maybe just people don't understand, he is basically a modern-day Master Yi. That is what he's supposed to be in his core fundamental. He's a bit flashier. He does have a bit more skill, I guess, to him, but fundamentally, he is a modern-day Master Yi. He's a big sword, auto-attacky type of champion. And he doesn't really feel like that because he actually feels more like a bruiser a lot of the time because he has Sterix, he has survivability, where he shouldn't. He actually is supposed to be kind of a glass cannon AD champ like Yi. And again, Yi himself can be surprisingly tanky, that Yi can buy 2 damage items, then kind of go tank, but still end up killing you really quickly, and then he won't die, because there's items that work for Master Yi out of his archetype of class. So that is what Riot is saying, is they want to stop a champion like Viego or Yi buying a damage or a tanky damage item because it shouldn't be for their archetype of light fighter. And if they do end up buying one of those items, there should be punishment for that. It's not what their champion is. This is all good stuff. So I don't know how they're actually planning on doing that, I'm going to be honest. So these kinds of characters do need some defensive options, though. And for that, we're moving Death's Dance, but oh god, Death's Dance. Oh, is it going to go back to being broken? This item was a cursed item for a while, I think. So this is interesting. We're moving Death Stance back towards hybrid physical/magic damage reduction. The reason why we chose Death Stance is that the item requires fighters to actually deal damage in order to survive the bleed. They can't just sit on the front line and soak damage, happy as a clam, leisurely waiting for the right opportunity to go in. Unless they fight with finesse, Death Stance will not save them, which is true. So if you don't know what Death Stance does, Death Stance basically is an anti-burst item, like Sterix, but it does it in a different way. So back when it was honestly a bit too strong when it first came out, and it took quite a while for them to change it. Death Stance, basically, let me just give you a random example. A Syndra does a burst combo on you of 2,000 damage. If you have Death Stance, what it will do is, instead of taking all of that 2,000 damage, you're like, oh, I'm dead, I got one shot. What it will do is you'll take, let's say, 1,000 damage of the 2,000 straight away. So you do get like half health. You took 1,000 damage straight away, but the remaining 1,000 damage that Syndra has dealt to you, instead of getting done straight away, you'll then have a bleed that is then done over like 3 seconds, and that is the remaining damage. It transfers part of the damage you've taken into a bleed effect instead. What this does is, one, you don't get insanely one shot straight away, and it gives you a chance to either do something to survive. So, like, you know, if you've got cleanse or like something like that. If you've got a tool, you can get healed. Like if a Kale can ult you, then you'll be fine anyway. But like, or it'll give you a chance to lifesteal back up if you can auto attack minions or champions. Or it gives you, oh my god, I'm gonna die, but at least I can go all in while the bleed is happening and kill the Syndra also, instead of just getting bursted one shot, boom, you can do nothing. That's what it's for. Interesting, but again, they still haven't really said anything about the AD, I will say, which is what I was kind of hoping from this. Outside of that, here, this is it, I think. We've shifted some other stats around to make sure that light fighters don't incidentally stack health by just building their damage items, which is true. Maybe these items were giving a bit too much health anyway. Risky characters should be building offensive tools that open them to death when they play poorly. So those items have to be powerful and tempting to purchase. Not every fighter should be able to use every fighter item in the shop, but every fighter should feel that they have items built for them. Okay, so this is the philosophy they're going with, I think, from what I'm getting. They haven't said it exactly. Is there anything that before I speculate? Okay, no, I'll read that in a second. Basically, what they're doing is they're removing health from items because it was giving maybe a bit too much health for the likes of the light fighter class. Aurelia, Fiora, Yi, Viego, they shouldn't have a lot of health. They're supposed to be the glass cannon equivalents, but for AD top laners and junglers and stuff. But what they're trying to do is make them... It's basically making the divide bigger of bruiser fighter and light fighter glass cannon. That's what they're doing. So because they're nerfing the tankiness, some people who still play Fiora or Viego are like, dude, I'm way too squishy. Why would I buy the item? I'm just going to be a tankier version of Fiora. I'm going to buy tank items now. Screw that. What Riot are doing are going, yes, we're removing health, but we're actually going to give you more damage. So you should buy this item because your character, Fiora, Viego, Yi, you want more damage, right? So yes, we've given it less health. You're not going to be as tanky, but you get to kill people quicker, even quicker. That's what they're doing. Okay, so yeah, we'll see. This could backfire majorly, I will say, because again, the damage in the game is still crazy high. I really do want to note that we were watching this closely and following up on outlier champions or items, whether too strong or too weak. I think it would be probably too strong. We're also keeping an eye on other classes who might poach these items as well. The Wind Brothers probably speak to my mind. They do these type of items occasionally. Some overlap is fine, but when a choice item overrides one of their own class's weaknesses, that's also not good. Oh my god, right? Like legit, Riot is talking about class weaknesses is supposed to be a thing. I kind of think Riot forgot that class weakness is supposed to be a thing for a long time. I will say it does feel like something's happened within Riot that they've kind of woken up. I don't know. I just have had this impression in the last couple of months that it's like, is the game direction starting to take that turn of... Maybe it's right axis, I don't know. But it's like, boom, doing an investigation about lowering damage and healing. Boom, we're changing the fighter items to make it so that not every fighter is really tanky, but also does a lot of damage. You have to pick. You either have to be tanky or you do a lot of damage. You can't really be both. This is interesting. And again, they're now even mentioning the items shouldn't be overlapping and, override one of their weaknesses. Again, a light fighter... Even like one of the Wind Brothers, they should, in theory, if they play bad, they should die. But there are items that save them too regularly. So this is cool. We still think that there are more spots in the system that need work, but we'd rather we take a good step towards making the current system better than wait until we can change it all at once. This is a step, I think, in them actually changing the game. So they're starting in this area, the top fighter area, but then they might do tank next, and maybe it's like, okay, tanks need to be tanky, but they're doing too much damage. Right, let's remove that. Let's change that. Next, let's look at mages. Oh, mages, you guys have got quite a lot of health sometimes, but we could up your damage if you wanted to. This is the start of, I think... Maybe Riot balancing the game well? I don't know. It's hard to say, but I'm actually kind of excited. So that is the fundamental. I came into this video a bit confused. Why are they adding AD to items that, one, do a lot of damage? The game has crazy damage. Why are you adding more damage? And the reason is they want to separate the subclasses of top lane again. Every top laner feels like kind of a bruiser fighter. Even a Fiora, even a whatever. They feel that way because they are that way. They shouldn't. That's the point. They only feel that way because they're all buying the same items. So this is designed to make it kind of go poof. And they actually have different subclasses that feel like different subclasses. This is a good thing. 100%. I back this 100%. I now understand. And this again was from Riot Plox, game designer on the Summoner's Rift team and feeder extraordinaire. Again, you've got to have jokes, I guess. But there we go. I'm actually pretty happy about this. Let me know what you guys think. Is it the right direction? I think it might be, which is surprising, I know. But yeah, let me know. If you guys enjoy, throw a like on it, throw a comment, throw a subscribe. See you guys next time. Peace.
Call down the reckoning to bring back hope and peace. dark regime.